two, one. Hey there. I've never done an intro for Spiritual Dope, but this is it. This is the intro for Spiritual Dope. And today I have with me Mona Loring, who is she's a PR. Well, you're a founder, right? You own the business, right? You own a couple of
Yes.
PR businesses, MLC PR, which is a boutique public relations firm specializing in tailored publicity services. And one of the lines in this, as I was checking it out, and I loved it, was you're talking about where is the line, because I loved it. I know. Oh, there it was. With ability, vigor, and charisma. I just loved, that's how you run your business. And I thought that was, I love that. And you also have conscious living PR, which is due to your own personal passion for the mind, body, and spirit connection. You felt like there was a hole in the market that was able to connect these areas with mainstream press and manage the brands and individuals within them properly, right? Let's chat a little bit about that one. And then, as if you didn't have anything else to do with being a mother, first and foremost, on top of all this, right? You've got this shamanic energy work, which you've got over here on Conscious Healing Co., where you do life coaching, spiritual coaching, energy work, and all the things. I think somebody like, where do you find the time? And I think, at least it is for me, when you're some of these things you're so passionate about, that's what lights you up. That's what gives you the energy to do it. You're like, oh, I get to go do this. And you always hear people say, well, you got to change the I got to I get to, but you got to change the I got to I get to. So thanks for joining me today. This is like a power punch. What is something like we can celebrate for you? What's a spiritual high? Let's start off on a spiritual high. What's a spiritual high you've had recently?
Spiritual high that I've had recently. That's an interesting question. A spiritual high. I mean, I feel like so many things are a spiritual high. I think anything going right is a spiritual high. The first thing that came to my mind, so I'm going to honor that, was a client referring me to another client because they love what I've done for them. That's a spiritual high because it was for my healing work. So it's specifically that way too. Nothing feels better than someone thinking that, you help them so much they want to have somebody else be able to benefit from the work you do because, again, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but the reason I do the healing work is simply because I want to see other people heal because I know how rough life can be, and so when someone's saying, hey, can I give your information to a friend because you've helped me out so much, it's like, that's like the best high. So I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, no, I love that. Right. I mean, I think that kind of validates the work that you do too, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I really am helping people up to the point where like, they've got to tell their friends about me. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I'll celebrate that as a spiritual high for sure. So here's the premise, right? The show's premise, podcast premise, whatever you want to call it, is, finding people such as yourself that have found within them like this calling to do so much more, and giving some disregard to the normal constraints, right? Of hey, this is how you do it. These are the lines. You stay within these lines.
Yes.
And you're going to be okay. You're going to make it through the end of life. You may not like knock it out, but you're going to get there fairly safe. Now, what you've done is you said, you know what? That's not how I feel. This doesn't feel right. I feel like I got to do this thing that's within me, and it is outside of the lines in a number of ways. Let's talk about like you deciding to honor that, and I think on top of that, in the role that you've got, right, like you manage high profile people, right, and then you got to be like, but my heart says this. Let's talk about it.
Well, there were so many different things you said that were spawning different thoughts in my mind, but I mean, let's start with just the fact that you started saying, following your heart and working outside of the norm and not having to necessarily stay coloring within the lines, that's been an interesting experience for me. Quite honestly, if I really look back my whole career in PR, at least, because I started out teaching myself publicity, and that's, at least back then, it was really unheard of. Usually you would go get a job at a big PR firm, you'd intern for a while, you'd be an assistant for years, and then you'd move up. And with me, I realize now it was my calling because I just fell into it. You know, I had someone who said, hey, is the work you're doing PR? Because I really need a publicist. And I said, no, I'm actually a journalist. That's the opposite of PR. And she said, that's all right. Don't worry about it. You're smart. You'll figure it out. You need a job. And that's how I actually started publicity.
Right.
So it started from day one out of the norm. And when I track it back, I can literally like look at the lines that just like you follow the lines and it's like dot, 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 put it all together and it's been spirit just guiding me. You know what I mean? Like those, I'm looking at those like numbered dot games that turn into a picture after a while, but you have no idea where you're going at the beginning. It feels like that.
Yeah.
And so really from the start, I never followed any rules. Right. And I really did just follow my instinct. I remember really early on meeting with this one client and he felt like I was BSing him because he was like, how do you know the answer to how you would do this when you're telling me honestly that you've only done PR for 6 months right. and you're claiming you're a publicist, but and I'm like, I go with my gut. And he was like, that just feels like BS. And I was like, that's the furthest thing from BS. You know, I just know what I should be doing for you, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
I think that I've just always followed what feels good. And if something felt really wrong, I looked at it, you know, was it my own fear? Was it wrong because it really isn't right for me? Whatever that might be. And if I felt like it's just really not right for me, I let it go. And that's kind of been the progression with my talent agency of just letting things go that were feeling forced or not right for me. I don't care how big of an A-lister you are. I don't care what you've done. If you're not a good person, if you don't light me up, if I don't get excited working on you, no amount of money, no amount of clout means anything to me. And people are starting to become more and more like that. I definitely have colleagues that think like that, that I was, in my world, I felt like I was the only one at the beginning when, right. you know, I shifted everything over and I started conscious living and I cut my talent list down and people thought it was nuts. They were like, okay, this girl's cracking up. She's sure. letting go of these people that she's worked on for so long and they're finally at this level and she's starting some hippy dippy PR firm, you know.
Hippies, man, they're popping up everywhere.
But it's what I knew would light me up. I did feel like I had a hole in my heart. I felt like, you know, I'm doing all of this work right now and I didn't feel, it's weird because I didn't feel appreciated, but it wasn't appreciation I was looking for. It was like that fulfillment. I didn't feel fulfilled.
Right.
And so when I started conscious living, it definitely had its hiccups. It wasn't just like smooth sailing. It took a while to really get that running. But at the end of the day, it just feels so right that I have both because I feel like I am really great at doing the talent PR. It just, I get it. I can do it in my sleep. I know what people want. And I've learned over the years that being intuitive doesn't hurt in PR. You know, you really can be one step ahead of things.
Sure.
But I just feel like anytime you feel like you need to stay within the confines of what you're expected to do, I'm trying to go back to your original question, you know, you limit yourself. And I just feel like I feel like we've had this conversation before where truly humans are pretty unlimited, you know, at the end of the day, like we really don't have any limits other than what we set on ourselves. Energy is limitless, you know, sure. And if we're all energy, then we're technically all limitless, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, when you boil it down, even like your whole body is some type of energy, right? Like, and so at the end of the day, like when you like, I'll catch myself anyways. And I say this to myself, like, well, I feel a little tired. I feel a little run out. I'm like, wait a second. I am literally energy. And I just like, I don't know, I boost myself, right? Like,
that's a really good point. I need to tell myself that next time I feel tired.
Right. Like, yeah, truly limitless. But I mean, I think I love how you kind of, you took a conscious living stand, right? You said, and you let go of some people. You broke out of a scarcity mindset, right? Was that an intentional thought then, or is that something where you look back now where you're like, you know what? And I also think about this other line from Jim Rohn's, like, you focused on the few that were meaningful, right? And they are the ones that kind of flourished the most. They're the ones that fulfilled you. They're the ones that were honoring your time and appreciating your time, and you know, kind of like a pretty flower garden or something, man. You know what I mean? Just like that. That's just kind of how it worked out, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that you let go of were like all the shade throwers.
One way or another, yes. Yeah. And I don't want to, I don't want to hate on, I like that term, but I'm going to use it because I can't think of something else right now.
Right.
But I don't want to hate on anybody that I had let go in the past. It would be so sad for them to look back on this and feel rejected by me or feel like I'm more than, I think I'm better than them or anything. Sometimes it's not even that you're bad people. I saw this quote the other day and it was so true. Sometimes it's not that, the relationship you broke up with, that person's a bad person, or, if you let go of an employee, that they're a bad employee. Sometimes you just don't have that chemistry. You're not right for each other. You're not supposed to be on the path with each other, and It goes into that other saying, you're either a blessing or a lesson. Sure. And if you, either way, first of all, if something turns out bad, it could be a blessing or a lesson, either way, right? And it doesn't mean that these people that I had let go, when I'm hearing this in my mind, I'm like, it's not that they were all, some of them were difficult.
it was time to split.
Not that they were all bad, right? It just didn't feel right. They were the ones where I was like, I feel like you have somebody else that needs to be in charge of your PR career.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a reason why it's a saying, outside of the people who are totally nervous about confronting people. But that's not me. No, genuinely though, you know what I mean? Like sometimes
Absolutely.
I look back and there's people that I let go of, or, that I've been let go of, that I root for them still to this day. I'm fans of theirs. They're wonderful people. They're brilliant actors, but they weren't for me. They're not supposed to be on my path, Right. And letting that go and having that open up this space. That's something I try to teach my clients, my energy clients. I'll specify which clients I'm talking about. Yeah. You have got to let negativity and energy that's draining you, that's not positive in your system, go and allow room for more. So many people are like, why can't I manifest this? Why can't I have this? I've been working so hard for X, Y, and Z, and I can't get it. And it's like, well, what do you need to let go of first? There's no room here. If it's energy, then things fill up, right? And I see that on people's energy bodies. And a lot of times when people are looking to manifest, I will see places where they need to let go of something in a certain chakra, for example. And we let that go and put light in, and that light can then be the energy to magnetically pull what you want to you. But if you're holding in that dark, that you think that it would magnetically pull anything, if anything, negative is going to pull negative, even though you think opposites attract. It doesn't work that way with you.
Well, the whole letting go thing, right? Because people are afraid to let go of this in so many different, like the energy that they've built up, everything they've done to get to this point that's got them so tense. They want to hold on to that. They're like, oh, I got to keep all of this. Whereas if they're like, man, I'm going to just need to let go of some of this shit. And once, like, it's like breathing out, right? Like when you take a deep breath, it's actually when you breathe out that you actually feel better. Not everything you take in. It's like when you let go of it, you're like super tense. And when you let it out, you're like, wow, I just relaxed when I let it out. So I mean, I liken it to that, right? So I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. I hear what you're saying. So all right, so you jump over into like, this conscious living aspect, and was there fear in doing that, or did you do it gradually, or was it a full immersion? Talk to us a little bit about like kind of transitioning or adding it into your life and what that was like.
So very few things in my life are a slow transition. It's just not how I work. Can't say that that's necessarily right for everybody, but it's just how I am. So I had, in a way, felt it coming in, over the past 6 months before I started conscious living, that something was missing. I didn't feel fulfilled. Of course, those feelings were there, but I didn't know what I needed to do from that, because I knew at the end of the day, I still love talent PR, but I don't always love it. What's going on? And it was just that I needed another element, right? And so when I decided to do it, I was just literally, it was Labor Day weekend, and I was meditating on a beach on the Central Coast. And I was just like, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? Why do I feel like this? Why do I feel lost? I have everything. Like, they always say, if you just look back at what you had always wanted and you realize that you have it now, you would have been so happy, and I realized that. I was like, I literally have the clients of my dreams. I have money. I have employees. I have, I want for nothing technically, but that's material.
Sure.
And what is that really, right?
Mm.
So I got the download, like, start another company. You don't have to let anything go. You just want more. Start a company. And I didn't get the name, but it was along the lines of, I knew it was like conscious or something about life. And I knew that I needed to start something with mind, body, spirit work. I knew I wanted to be involved with people who had that same mindset. And I also knew that there was a shift happening that would create a space where those people needed to be promoted, you know? So when I decided to do it, I kid you not, I built that website all on my own one weekend, and
Nice.
I hired an employee to come work with me within a week. And we had clients within, I want to say 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
And like I said, it wasn't completely smooth sailing. It's, you know, things happen, but I got it up pretty quickly. So it was definitely not really a transition period.
Right.
And I wrote an email to all my existing clients, and, you know, I thanked them for being amazing. I told them, you might start hearing things about me because I'm dropping other clients and people might think I've cracked up, but, you know, I'm still me. I'm still who I am. If anything, I feel like I understand things more clear and I have more clarity.
Right.
And of course, the right people I kept embraced it with open arms, and they were gracious and said, you know, thanks for believing in me back. And it was awesome. So it just felt completely right as it all developed.
I love it. I love it. Would you be able to cite like any specific kind of like awakening moment? Would you consider that the awakening moment, or would you consider something else kind of an epiphany moment where you said, hey, I'm tapped into spirituality like super strong?
You know, I've wondered about awakening moments because I see other people's. Mine was really hardcore and out of nowhere and at a pretty young age. So it's hard to compare it to other things later in life that have sort of reawakened me. But if I had to kind of track my past, it would be, I always laugh because I can't believe this is what did it, but it was literally a Ouija board.
Should have get you every time.
Like, oh my God, really? But I got the Ouija board. I think it was for my 13th birthday. It was like 8th grade or something, and played it with some friends, you know, and you start to think like, oh, who's pushing it, laughing, you know, which boy likes who, and, you know, all those things.
Right. And
then it started to, I would have the board away and I'd have it tucked away. And then I started to hear things and feel things. And that was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was very strange. And I realized that I could see energy and I was aware of things and I could feel, I'm very attuned to vibration. And so I could feel the energy of like a bed or a table and kind of buzzing. And it was very strange, and it scared me a lot. And, you know, when you're a kid, especially when you haven't been educated and there's nothing online, there's no such thing as the internet really at that age. I don't think it was around even. Maybe just AOL was just starting. And yeah.
You have mail.
I didn't know how to look into any of it. You got mail. I didn't know how to look into any of it. And so I just, looking back, it's kind of cool because I had to just experience everything on my own, and everything that Spirit told me that I had told my friends. I have some friends that knew me then that still know me now, and they're like, how did you know that? How did you know? It's trippy stuff.
Right.
But of course I do wish at times like I could go to my mom, who was really spiritual or something, and she'd be like my son, he's very spiritual, and he'll ask me things and I'm like, oh, I got you, this is why, or whatever, you know.
So your mom was pretty spiritual into that space as well?
My mom is very spiritual, but she was a little bit more religious than spiritual. She had a Muslim faith then. Now she's a lot more spiritual and not really religious. But no, she would tell me things like, I see God as a light and it's not a person. And like, she would give me things like that.
Right.
But no, she had no idea this was going on. I actually came out to my parents late about how my spiritual work, you know, came around. Like I just told them this past year, but I had friends that knew, you know, decades.
Right.
But
I love that there's like,
I was just terrified about them like judging me and wondering like,
sure,
my daughter's crazy. But but it was hilarious when I finally told them. They were like, read me. It was like hilarious. It was just
that's awesome. That's great.
But the problem I had during my spiritual awakening was that I didn't know the difference between dark and light.
Mm.
And I also didn't know what I know now of you need dark for light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about the balance, and that's okay. And it's not only, if you're only going to the light and you only deal with the light, you're leaving some shadows and work that you really need to face behind too. Life is about balance, you know? And so when I was younger, it scared me because all I knew were things that you hear in books or see in movies, right? And I was like, are these ghosts? Are these like, is this demons? And I was just thinking the bad. And so I was just bringing over more darkness and it was freaking me out, you know? So I put it aside after high school because it was really so consuming. You know, I remember, I'll look back and I'll remember being in like Spanish class and automatic writing, you know, just literally just having spirit go through me and just automatic writing. I can't remember. I wish I had kept those things now. But like, you know, just writing what spirit wants me to know and telling me things about my friends and their souls and their soul growth. And it was very big on souls and soul growth. And
do you feel like you'd be able to tap into that like anytime now?
Yeah,
have you tried it?
I
When's the last time
have
you did it?
not. For some reason, and of course it's come up with a lot of the mediumship work I've done and then the courses I've taken. And, you know, I have friends, you and I have one in common, that can let spirit kind of come really close or within and kind of speak through her.
Right.
But I think because of the past that I had and the lack of control, and when I know now that this is all energy and it's all about control and I just want it positive light and I want it the way I want, I don't want to go there. Right. But I know for a fact that I could probably channel things pretty easily. It's not what I'm doing. It's not what I do.
Sure. No, I get it. I liken this kind of what you're talking about there, the energy kind of flowing through you, uncontrolled, unbidden, as it were, right? Because you're not kind of expecting it, but then it shows up the way that it did for you. I liken it to like anime, right? Like, because there's always some like crazy guy that's got like all this energy coming through. He's always like blowing everything up, and it's not until he finds his master, he finds somebody he can talk to. He's like, hey, you got to figure this out. And then he becomes like this ultra powerful dude that's got like a few special power moves, right? Like your intuition and like, you know, like you're a shaman and like some of this other stuff. Am I wrong?
I'm laughing as you say that because I was just telling my son, he was begging me to play the new Star Wars game with him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Mom, I just think you'd like it. They speak your language and the guy has to meditate and recharge. And as I started playing it with him, and I started to see Star Wars in a different light, which I should have seen it this way sooner, but it's so amazing to me how sci-fi is based on so much truth and based on how things really work. You know who's behind the Star Wars,
right?
Who are you going to say?
Joseph Campbell, right? Like the whole Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
So I mean, look.
But what do you mean behind it? In what way, though?
Well, so
maybe I'm not as clear as
you. George Lucas based pretty much the whole premise.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering if somehow he had other involvement. Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, you know,
I didn't know that for a very long time. Actually, the hero's journey. Like I didn't know about the connection to Star Wars, and not until I don't even know last year or something.
Yeah. Well, so I, you know, probably vaguely heard about it, and I'd heard about like the hero's journey a couple of times, and it wasn't until I watched that, you know, PBS special that they have on Netflix with him and like
yes, I saw that.
He's so awesome. I'm like, why? You know, there's so many great people that are dead, and I'm like so pissed. Like, you know, going back to like, you know, like Wayne Dyer, Alan Watts, and like, you know, Joseph Campbell. You're like, what? You guys couldn't wait like 10 more minutes, right? You know what I mean? But you know, so yeah, it's when you can see it through the lens that you're talking about, though, you're seeing it through like this other lens, and it's like it's very much that cliche. Well, when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Yes.
Right? Like you're like, oh, Yoda.
So true.
Yoda, you were so on top of things.
It's so true.
That's great. You know, so I want to ask you just kind of like, so I got this weird book, you know, I just call it weird because I'd never heard of it before. And then I picked it up, and it's like, you know, this is really based off of like Orthodox, like Christianity. And this guy also, Carl, where is he? Carlfried Graf Durkheim. He spent about 10 years with Zen Buddhists in Japan, like in the 30s and 40s, right? So he was kind of he was probably hanging out with Watts, I'm guessing, at some point, right? But there's a couple lines in here that, like, you know, really, really struck me, and I'm just curious if they kind of resonate with you, right? We talked about the limitations, right? Once you realize there's no limitations, or you're limitless as a human being, right? I mean, so before him now are open stages of maturity on a path with no boundaries, right? Like, I mean, how does somebody know this stuff, right? Like, and you're like, what? Before him now are open stages of maturity on a path with no boundaries, right? Like, and that talks to like the limitless things, right? Let's find the other one, because so this, you know, you talk about like you know, kind of getting wrapped up and it was all too much, like at a certain point, and this is like the whole thing. My awakening aspect didn't happen probably till like about 3 or 4 years ago, right? And you know, it was just like a punch in the gut, and I was like, what is going on? Now, I had the benefit of having a hippie mom. I was born in San Francisco. Like, I had like all the, like, I was like, oh shit, this is everything that I'd heard about and laughed at. Right. But, you know, but this is the line, right? Life no longer turns around man, but around divine being and its manifestation, right? Like, I mean, so that's right. Like, where you realize there's something's missing. It's like the divine aspect. And like, once, you know, that kind of, I mean, you're wrapped up around it now, right? Like, that's what gives you life. Am I in or out? What do you think?
In what way? What do I think about which part?
I mean, you know, so, I mean, you're no longer kind of wrapped around like the
attachment to man.
Well, just the man stuff, right? Like, and it's like really what's driving life is like the divine light in you, or, you know, something along those lines, right? Like, that's the greater driving force.
I mean, my head goes into so many directions with that. You know, it's, for me, the powerful part of that was the manifestation of, and, you know, I'm going so many places because of what I just recently read too.
What did you just recently read?
Well, I was just reading about a little bit more about the fifth dimension. Okay. And I was reading about parallel lives. And so I'm like, you're like, oh, Mona, you're taking me somewhere else right now. But, you know, it just made me think of how, you know, we think for so much of our lives, because we're conditioned, we think that what we are is just what our body is, right? And the man, the people we see and what we actually see, which is so funny to me, because when you stop and think about it, so much of what we don't see, we take as reality too. But then when spirit comes into it, people are like, that's not real, you know? And I just recently did read about how people don't question dreams, and that dreams are real and you have a dream, but yet how do you know it's real? It's the same thing as someone just telling you that they had a thought, but yet everybody accepts that, right? And so this was just leading me down the rabbit hole of thought of, you know, parallel lives, and just how it's not the body, it's the soul, and how many lives each soul has and spawns. And there's so many different, that'd be a whole different podcast. But, you know, also I'm thinking about how, oh man, it's so funny when you get me started, it's hilarious. I'm like, I need to really think about where I want to go and what I want to tell you, because I want to tell you about so many different things. But, you know, just what you think becomes, right? And so I think this is another part, and what that quote was saying is, you know, you manifest what your life is. I mean, I tell my clients that all the time, what you think you become. And earlier you had kind of said something along the lines of something about scarcity with my business. And, you know, was I afraid? And, you know, for some reason, one of the most, I'm so grateful for this gift and personality trait, but I've never been afraid of lack. I've never been afraid of scarcity. I've always just been like, well, if I think I can do it, I can do it.
That's nice.
And it is nice. And I'm very grateful for that, because I know that it's difficult if you can't. And there's been times where that stumped me more recently than not, which has been really interesting. But, you know,
it's got to be a curious point too. When you're stumped, you're like, well, like you said, that doesn't make any sense. This isn't, so there's something in that, right? Like what is there? Like, you know,
What's the blockage?
Yeah.
You know?
So who, I mean, so as a, you know, I think that's an interesting question too, is like, as a shaman, as a light worker, as somebody that's intuitive, medium, who do you go to when you need help?
Oh man, I have some amazing people that I go to. And I want to correct one thing. I don't call myself a shaman. I'm shamanically trained.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the identity of a shaman is something different. And, you know, I believe in certain ways it's indigenous, and I don't want to take that on for myself.
I hear that.
Also, because with the training that I've had, I have kind of turned it into my own thing. And through these beautiful, you know, I'm going to answer you right now, who do I go to? They're my teachers, and who I go to, they've taught me so many different pieces of what spirit is, because there's no one right way to work with spirit. There's no one right way to work with energy, you know? Sure. It's literally like going in to get a massage, and you're like, do you want a Swedish massage? Do you want a Thai massage? It's all massage. It's all good for you, right? But there's different ways that people do it. And it's the same thing with spirit.
Right.
I'm going to give a major shout out to one of my mentors and friends, Andre. You can find him at Fine Andre on Instagram, and he's incredible. And he's all about energy frequency healing. And it's been interesting with him being one of my teachers, because he's like a Mr. Miyagi in the sense of how he did not answer, I want to make sure I'm accurate in saying any of my questions ever. Right. I would ask the question, and he'd say, what do you think? Come back to me in 6 months. It was so frustrating. And I get it now, and I get it's his way of working with people. And I always think like, man, if I did that to people, they'd be like, get out of here. I'm never going to talk to you again. But he's so good at it. And, you know, he's so incredible with what he does with energy. He can do some incredible healing for people with just a very light touch. I mean, people who can't walk straight, just barely touching, and it's incredible. Look him up.
That's awesome.
But, you know,
I listened to I checked out your podcast with him, you know, you two talking.
Yes.
It was really nice. And, you know, it was nice because you could tell you guys had, you know, a nice bond, a nice connection, right?
Yeah, he's like a big brother. He's really an amazing person, and he's really given me the confidence to go into healing when I was like, you know, limiting myself of, I'm a publicist. That's what I'm supposed to do. Why would I do healing too? And people won't take me seriously as a publicist if I'm a healer. That's right. People won't take me seriously.
How'd you break through that? Like, how did you?
Publicist.
Was it him? Was it him? I mean, so, you know, because look, I remember when I for my first, you know, kind of foray into the space, right? Very similar feelings, right? Mine was with coaching fathers, right? And I was like, why, what gives me the audacity? Right? Who am I to say, like, you know, I should be a coach dad, right?
Right.
Coach, whatever. As you can tell, I was awesome at it. But it was like, and the coach that I had is like, well, you do, you know, just, you've got to give yourself the permission to be great. You know, who else is going to do it for you? If you're expecting somebody else to give you permission to be great, like, you're always going to be waiting.
Yeah.
That's
exactly it. And I don't want to interrupt you. What was your question?
No. So, I mean, how'd you blow past it, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I initially started doing this. I mean, first of all, I've been doing it again since I was 13, on and off with friends. You know, there were times where I've always been studying. I've always been exploring it. But when I took the dive into actually doing it as a profession, that was only last year. And it was after working with friends, you know, on the DL, working with family, and just being like, okay, can you just, like, one more time, just make sure you tell me I'm not bullshit. You know, can I really do this? Did I just really, like, predict this? Because I don't want to tell somebody I'm a psychic if I'm just, you know, like, if the self-doubt is so real. And for me, there was so much self-doubt at the beginning because I take it so seriously. I take what people believe in the spirit world so seriously, and I never ever want to mix myself up or seem like I'm a charlatan and with anybody who's like that, because people are always after money for the quick buck of saying something about energy or spirit, and God, I run into them all the time. And that was where I just needed to make sure that I was legit. And I realized the best way to be legit is to be pure of heart. You know, like, if you just genuinely care for that person's well-being,
Right.
Spirit will not steer you the wrong way. I mean, there's been days where Spirit was like, let me take the wheel. And literally, like, I'm just holding that space and I'm like watching one of my spirit guides work on this person. It's incredible.
It reminds me of, well, first of all, you and I talked before today a little bit, and we talked about stepping into this space and how it just kind of opens up for you once you open yourself up to it, right? Kind of thing. I know that sounds like, some other mythical line, but I was reading the Michael Singer
Yeah.
surrender experiment, right? Where he talks about, maybe he recognized when he let go that, like, Mother Earth, nature, whatever, was going to give him so much more than he'd ever dreamed possible by kind of setting his own standards.
Yeah.
Right. Have you found that kind of for yourself to be something true?
Absolutely. And I think the most common theme for me is just trust the universe and trust spirit. And that's within my own life and what I'm doing. And let me tell you, all day long, we could have a whole podcast episode about how I've been doing it with COVID. Right. But yeah, I think that you really do need to, I think that's why people say surrender to spirit, surrender to God or whatever. And it sounds so intense and it sounds so scary. And it's like, okay, are you joining a cult? Like, what does this mean? Right. But it's different. It's not surrendering and letting something lead you. You still have free will. You can think for yourself. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. But it's just that trust. I think it just means trust,
Right.
And I think that just for me, I have to just sometimes being a publicist and being a healer is really weird because you have two completely different personalities. When I'm in PR, and I mean, obviously I'm not one of those really gentle, ethereal, fairy, airy healers, and you can tell, like, I'm a little bit more on the intense side, so at least the publicist is still there in that way. But I mean, my voice changes when I'm in a healing session with people. I'm softer, I'm slower. Sure. And as a publicist, you're intense and it's go, go, go. And how do you get it done? And,
Right.
And so when I switch to being a healer, I have to just surrender to spirit. Just, what do you need me to do? What are you showing me? Where do I see this energy that's hurting someone? Where do I, what is it? Just show me. Right. I'm not doing any of that myself, first of all. So if you want to heal yourself or be a healer or get into anything that's spiritual, you have to trust spirit, because if you're going to be one of those people, which I have them in my family, and they've come a long way because of, seeing me and luckily trusting to work with spirit more. But, if you're going to sit here with your arms crossed and go, show me, prove it, show me.
Yeah.
You're not going to see anything. You really aren't.
Right.
And then when you let go and you trust, and this is why it's great for some people, I'm not advocating for everyone, but plant medicine is really great for some people because it takes away all those inhibitions, and you're not sitting there in your thought brain and you're stuck in your ego mind and, thinking, well, logically this and that, you're just letting go and you're feeling and you're seeing. And if you do that, you do not need plant medicine for any of that. But if you do that, spirit will show you, but you have to first take the first step forward and trust.
You got to be, all full of all the lines, right? Open everything and attached to nothing, right?
Yes.
Right. And we also talked a little bit about, so it opens up for you once you accept it, but then you got the people that are trying to manifest with such great intensity, like you were talking about earlier too, when somebody's like, I just keep trying, and it's the people that can't let go. But it's also when they're trying so hard to force it, they're trying to force it themselves. They're trying to use their own personal energy, right? And versus, Alan Watts line, trust the universe is another, right? Just trust the universe is another, or the whole let go and let God.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, did that really just come out of your mouth? And yeah, it just came out of my mouth. And you're like, let go, let God. Why would you say that? Because it works.
Yeah.
And with the LOA thing, right? Law of attraction bit, right? Look for evidence of it, like you were talking about before, right? You got somebody's like, not on my watch.
Yes.
You're like, right? So, talk a little bit about looking for evidence of it, right? Like if you're trying to be in that space, tell us a little bit about that. What's that look like?
So it's so funny. Everything you ask me, I'm like, man, I need a whole podcast episode for just this. But all right, bite-sized pieces. So I love law of attraction and manifestation, and I think that's truly why anything exists. And for better or for worse, why good exists and why bad exists, And I think that what people don't realize is they only do a few steps of like the whole list of what you need to do to manifest. And it's hard. I mean, I'm sitting here preaching to the choir, and I'll tell clients what they need to do. But there's times where I'm blind and I'm lost in my own self-limiting beliefs again, or my energy in a certain way. And I'm blocking myself from manifesting too, because we're human and we get in our own way. That is the number one thing humans do best, is get in their own way. But I think that really what's so important is just being in that vibration. And, even with my psychic work, it's all about kind of attuning to that radio station is how I explain it, and just getting into this vibration. And law of attraction is one of the easier vibrations to be in, because at the end of the day, if you are in gratitude and if you are in love, there's no wrong way. If you are as often as you can, and it's kind of the tipping scale where it's like, if you're more love than anything else, you're still going to tip it over and it's going to help you out and you're going to be on that vibration. Right. So you don't even have to be perfect. That's why it's so easy,
Lucky us.
For me, one thing I do to just stay in it as often as I can, obviously it helps now that I'm doing so much more healing work, because that's keeping my vibration up and just helping people and the love I feel for people and, meditation and all of that. But that aside, let's say I wasn't doing that. For me, before I really got into a day-to-day, I would go on Instagram and just follow really high vibe people and high vibe things, and follow, places I want to go on vacation that I love. Right. And follow, just nature pictures, and that all increases your vibration. Listening to music that you love, being outside.
It sounds like you were focusing on things that you wanted in your life.
This is the thing. So I think the first step is just things that you like, that make you feel good. Mm-hmm. That's the very first step of just getting to a better place, because some people, they're going to, they're trying to practice LOA and they're in a dark place, and they're like, well, how do I attract this when I'm just so far from the goal? So that's kind of what I'm getting into, is sort of like that first step of what you need to do to just almost effortlessly raise your vibration. Then, of course, there's the other list of things that you need to do, which is like very specifically think about what you want. But it's tricky because, well, you can't be too specific, because if you're too specific, you're limiting what you want.
Right. Well, I mean, that's kind of speaking in generalities, right? And this also goes back to, too much focus on your own intention and trying to do it yourself, because in that aspect, then you're limited to what you think is possible versus what is truly possible.
Yes. Well said. Exactly.
That's so much fun. So much fun. So, spiritual dope. I like the idea of, just kind of when you feel connected to like divinity and getting that high, right? That's again, the premise of kind of spiritual dope, right? Yeah. I don't know, let's talk about another spiritual dope experience. Like, what do you do to get your daily dose, your daily hit? Your gratitude practice, your meditation, seeing your kid thrive, right? You have how many children? One or two? Two. How old are they?
15 and 11, boy and a girl.
Oh man, 15, 11. Nice. And so seeing them thrive and like getting to be their mom, I think that's also, God, that's another one of those lines too. You're like, was it children are a blessing? You're like, shut up. Yeah. You're like, oh wow, what a blessing they are, right? I don't know. Give me something that that I haven't hit on that you would consider like a spiritual high, spiritual hit, spiritual dope. Hit me with it.
I love that. What else is spiritual dope? I mean, there's so many things. It's like, it's such an interesting question, because it's so easy, but then it's complicated.
Who's like
Because it's like anything that makes you really happy is spiritual dope. Like that's simple. You know what I mean?
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, well, let me give you something like a little bit more serious or intent. Like, you know, we're talking about like gratitude and meditation and, you know, like I'm looking outside right now as we talk. I tend to look outside this window a lot when I do my sessions. And, you know, this is the computer here and I look outside. It kind of gives me that zeroing in of not really being in a space and letting myself flow. And I'm looking outside and I'm seeing sunlight. Like sunlight, spiritual dope.
Yeah.
I can tell you that right now for sure.
Dude, there's a line that's like, that talks about God, like, you know, the difference between like kind of being human with divinity is in relation to God is like, you know, being warmed by the sun, but not being the sun, right? Like, I mean, to me, that's pretty powerful. So it's right. So the sun, who is like, you know, some of your all-time favorites? If you're on a, you know, what is it? I'm a big fan of High Fidelity, the movie. I'm not sure if you're a John Cusack fan or not.
I love him.
Right. So, you know, Island all-time, you know, top 5. You're gotta be stuck listening to them, talking to them. Spiritual people. Who are they?
Oh man, I thought that was the question you're gonna ask, and I was like, I'm not ready. Okay, I'm gonna go with because he really broke me into truly spiritual literature, and he was really kind of my first. Wayne Dyer, definitely him. He and anyone who hasn't experienced him, I would say listen to him because his voice is so soothing. Right. That's just half of it right there. It changed my life so much more to actually start to listen to what he has to say over just read what he has to say. But his Power of Intention was the first book I read and of his books, and I thought it was brilliant. Who else? Okay, who are my faves? Oh, I'm literally looking at all my books around here. I'm cheating so hard.
What's the closest one to you?
I really like Joe Dispenza right now. I'm kind of, so it's like, oh, all time is rough, but like I'm pretty hot on him right now just because he's a tough one for some people to grasp because in certain ways he doesn't answer all your questions. Like I was introducing him to my husband and my husband was like, but he doesn't explain what and he doesn't explain how. Like it's a little vague. And if you really were to like need all that detail, there is a little bit of vagueness to what he's saying. You have to, but that's what spirit's a little vague. And I used to, you know, it is like, we don't know everything, you know?
What makes it a challenge is like, how are you going to describe to somebody that's never had the experience what being filled by spirit's like?
Yeah.
Right. Or existing or feeling on that level. And that's where the differentials come from so many different spaces. 'Cause you can't put that shit into words.
You can't. And it's hard. And, you know, there's a meditation that he has that I've tried to do and I've succeeded once really well. And it was mind blowing. But I find what he has to say really interesting. And I'm a huge believer, and he breaks down into people like Greg Braden and
I love Greg. Yeah.
Like they're so interesting to me.
So Greg's the one that finally. So I've got like if you remember the movie High Fidelity, where he's got his albums lined in like chronological order, right?
I remember the movie. It's been a minute.
God, listen,
man.
Just, you know, if you get super down on anything, you should go watch it because it's always entertaining. But he's got his albums like in chronological order, right? He'll be like, I can tell you how I got to, you know, this album to that album to this album.
I remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like me. I'm like, well, I can tell you how I got to Alan Watts and I got to the Buddhism and then I got over here into Greg Braden. And so Alan Watts is always talking about in Buddhism, they talk about the heart-mind connection, right? And man, I went off on a search. I was like, I got to find out more about this heart-mind connection. Google. And Greg Braden did it in one of his sessions on the Lost Gospels of Thomas. And you've just got to connect the two in a resonant manner. And like when you've connected the two, you'll know it. And that's like that heart mind connection. And that's when people like, that's when you're in full gratitude and you express a wish, I mean, that's when you're going to be like most resonant, because now you've got your mind and your heart like in tune. I mean, that's part of the whole heart math bit, right? Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what else? What you don't need, like, I love the amplification process of movies, media, podcasting. To me, it's just like one big soapbox for me. I'm like, well, this is how I'm going to amplify my message, right? But you don't need all this. You can just do it with that heart mind connection. And so Greg Braden, that's my guy. That's my guy. It's like when you have those, when you trip over those things, I think, so you're talking about, I'm looking for.
Yeah, I was literally cheating again, looking at my bookcase.
You're good. So the meditation that Joe Dispenza you did, I mean, I've been working on that one. That sounds like, so is it the one that's at the beginning of Becoming Supernatural? Because I've got the audio. I need the book, right?
Well, I don't know if it's at the beginning of Becoming Supernatural. I haven't done it in a minute. But I believe he only, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he only has one true, like, it's always the same. He has one main meditation that's his theory. And it goes, I remember how it goes, like, imagine the space between your temples in space. And like the way he says that, some people are like, wait, like, what are you saying to me?
Right.
But if you just give yourself the permission to let go, and whatever that's defined as for you will work, it's a pretty interesting meditation. And it's all about shooting your energy from like your tailbone up your body. It's really interesting.
Well, I mean, so he talks about like how to do that, right? By like, making the, stomach muscle strong and like all that stuff. It sounds like to me, like Kundalini, like a Kundalini practice, but also, again, due to my friend over here, Carl Fried, this guy from Germany who spent the time over in Japan. It's the same thing. It's a Zen. Is it flipped or backwards on this side? I don't know.
It looks perfect. Hara.
Right. So it's the same exercise, which is, to me, I love that, because it's you're like, wow, these things. It's the same stomach exercise, like where you do the meditation and get the energy, pumped up to the back of your head and give yourself the DMT shot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that one.
It's along the lines of that natural DMT.
Right.
That's a very powerful thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
Ugh. That would be one I would chase for a while, I'm sure.
DMT?
Is that wrong? Like, no, just yes, but I mean, but I want to do it like where I don't get in trouble for having a handful of it. But I love the fact that our bodies are, I mean, that's the whole, the whole alchemy aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, our bodies, generate all the things that we really need if we give into it, or if we know how to make it happen, such as the meditation that you're talking about. Yeah. Give me like one more of your top fives.
These are some shamanic books. I don't know if it's top 5. Let's see. Who else? God, I love so many people. I'm excited that I said Wayne Dyer. That goes to show he really just opened me up to the world, and I love that. Who else would I say? I love that you're just watching me on this podcast looking around my office. Oh, you know what? I haven't finished it. I didn't finish. I have so many books. I wish I could just take my computer around and show you. It's everywhere. I haven't finished this book, which is crazy that I'm going to recommend it, but it's because I'm a Gemini, and I start a book and then I read half of it and then I jump to the next thing and I'll go back to it. And I probably am reading about 5 books at one given time. Autobiography of a Yogi. I suggest anyone who wants to know a little bit of something about something. So I bought that at his actual spiritual center down in Encinitas, San Diego.
Okay. And
it's an awesome place that anyone who's in SoCal should definitely visit if they can at some point. And it's such an interesting book because I want to grab it. Paramahansa Yogananda. I was like, how am I going to butcher this?
Yogananda. That's my name.
This guy. It's just so interesting because I've even gone on YouTube before and done some of the meditations that they have available, and they're pretty great. And it's all just, you know, the meditations they did, they were all just based on love. But it's really, this is named one of the 100 best spiritual books of the 20th century. It says it right here. But the self-realization of just anything that you're doing in meditation and in spirit, I think I would, even though I haven't finished this, so I feel like I'm a little bit of a cheat saying this, but from what I had read of it, and again, you know, diving into what it's about, and, you know, this is a little bit, you know, tells you about his life and stuff too, but, you know, the theory behind self-realization is beautiful to me. And I think that the number one thing that I've learned that I believe my mentors were always trying to teach me, and I want everybody else to really believe, is that you really have all the answers you need inside. You really don't need to look without to know anything. You really, I mean, it's part of the whole Akashic records, you know, it's like the information's already in a certain field. Right. You just dive into it and you dial into the frequency, and you can get any information you want to know, because it's there for you. And of course that's easier said than done. And I know that if you're not in a certain mindset or in a certain space, you can't necessarily do that. But that's why I feel like meditation is so important, you know, because you will have so much information. I mean, how was I a 13-year-old girl telling people about how souls work? And then, you know, 5 years ago, I was reading this book. God, I wish I could remember the book. Robert Schwartz, he wrote it. Not that I totally believe everything that he said, not that I think he's a liar either, I just don't know. But the things that were in this book were things I was telling people at 13. It was very bizarre. And, you know, how, if it's not about dialing within yourself and tapping into the energy field around you, how would I have even known to tell these people these things that I had never stopped to think about?
No, I love it. I love that, because, you know, the way I think about it is kind of like even in coaching, any kind of like creative nature forces are through you for the benefit almost more for somebody else, right? So it's like, you don't know, you just got to open yourself up to it, and, you know, you're there for the benefit of somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Is kind of one of the ways I see it. So just being a vehicle of that energy, right? Being a vehicle of that, you know, information is energy, right? So I love that. What would you say, I'll end it up here real quick for us, but, you know, when you're kind of first coming into it, right? You did it at like 13, there was no Google, there's no Facebook group. There was like, you know, finding these books, right? And kind of getting that validation there. Or let's say somebody is coming into it right now, right? Where would you send them? Like, you know, somebody says like, oh my God, I feel like, you know, I'm touching God, like, and I must be crazy. What would you tell them?
That's such a tough one, because I think there's no right answer for just everybody. You know, I know that might seem like a cop-out, but it's true. I would ask someone, you know, what do you feel like you want to know more about? You know, you're touching God. What does that look like to you? Do you need something that's going to help you go within more? Do you need something that's going to be a little bit more of a play-by-play so you can expand a little further? You know what I mean? Everybody's so different. And that's why I think I was just so stumped with my top 5 books, because I'm looking around, I'm like, well, depending on this person, color therapy is really great, but you know what I mean? Because it depends on what someone wants. Right. But I would say that anything that you choose to expand your mind with, whether it ends up being right for you or not, is still opening you up to a certain space, and it's just going to lead you down in a good way, a beautiful rabbit hole of more, you know? Sure. Yeah. And my clients definitely ask me, you know, what book do you recommend I read? And Michael Singer has definitely been one of them. Michael Singer, Untethered Soul. That's a great book. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm like, I knew it was bugging me. I didn't see it anywhere here. I think my sister has that one. Actually, she took it from me.
It's out online.
You know, I think that it's just about, you know, I know some people that have really opened up because they read The Secret. As hokey as people think The Secret is, I think it's brilliant because it helps people
It's got its
in
place.
the mainstream open up to
100%.
LOA, you know?
100%.
And I
Yeah.
think that the Abraham books are amazing. And
I
oh my
love
gosh,
me
I
some
forgot my
Abraham.
all-time favorite book. I cannot believe it. Jane Roberts, the Seth books. They're
Okay.
incredible. They are incredible. And they're not easy reads because it's just the things that, so basically Seth is an entity, a spiritual entity that comes out of this woman, Jane Roberts, that writes these books with her husband, dictating, basically writing what she's been saying. And the things that he talks about are just so incredible. And I remember so early on being like, well, you know, what would be the answer to this, you know, spiritual question that, like, you know, things that you would never, how can someone project energy over to another? Like, how does telepathic, you know, telepathy, thank you, telepathy work? Say that 10 times fast. Telepathy. You know, it's check the book out. I've recommended it to a lot of people.
Okay.
I really liked it on Audible because you can kind of just soak it in and listen to it.
Yeah.
But I would have to say that's probably the coolest book that I've ever read.
Yeah.
And that was a tough one because you saw me struggling just now, trying to cheat by looking around my office.
It finally came out.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. You know, when you talk about Wayne Dyer too, his movie that I listened to more than I watched, The Shift, is kind of one of the ones where it helped me to make so much sense of things for myself, right? To understand that, again, that like I wasn't crazy. Like there was like, you know, like many people have walked on this path before me, right? Type of thing. And when you understand that, you're like, cool. Now let's roll with it. Let's like, you know, we know that some things are possible with this, and they're going to lead to who knows what, but you just kind of, you chase it, you follow it, you have fun with it. I love it. I love it all. So let's cap it. Let's cap it because obviously we can do this forever.
I know every question you asked me, I was like, oh, but I need a whole episode for that.
No, I believe it 100%. There's so much down each spot, right? Each nook and cranny. It's like an awesome English muffin, except different. Where, you know, I think most of the people that are gonna be tuning into this would check out your conscious living and your conscious PR, right? So where should we send people to come find you?
You can find me on Conscious Living PR and Instagram. You can find us at MLC PR. I doubt anyone listening to this cares about MLC PR, but MLC PR is my talent firm. My personal profile is private just for people I know, but I do have a healing one that I believe is called, I don't usually tell people what it is. So I believe it's Healing with Mona. It's Conscious Healing Co. on Instagram too. And you could go to conscioushealingco.com if you want to read a little bit more about my background and my bio there.
Awesome. Great site. Very well done.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.